Welcome to Criminal Stories. The nocturnal mist settled over the streets of Paris, covering the city with a veil of mystery. In a quiet neighborhood of the 16th district, life went on with apparent normality until a macabre discovery shook the community. A blood-curdling scream echoed from an apartment, drawing the attention of nearby residents. The police arrived quickly at the scene, only to find an image that defied all understanding. Inside the apartment, an indescribable horror awaited. The mutilated body of a young woman lay on the floor, surrounded by kitchen utensils and strange containers. The atmosphere was saturated with a metallic aroma, mixed with something unspeakable. The authorities, baffled, knew they were facing a case that would challenge sanity and reveal the darkest corners of the human mind. The question echoing in their minds was simple and terrifying. Who had committed such a monstrous act? The investigation began with palpable urgency. Inspector Arnaud Lefebvre, known for his sharp intuition and tenacity, was assigned to lead the case. Lefebvre, a man in his 50s with an impeccable track record of solving complex cases, knew he was facing one of the darkest challenges of his career. The victim was identified as Renée Hartevelt, a Dutch exchange student who had come to Paris to continue her studies. Renée had been accepted into a prestigious university in the city, where she stood out for her intelligence and charisma. Her friends and classmates described her as a brilliant and kind young woman with no known enemies. Her green eyes, full of life, and her contagious smile had left a lasting impression on everyone who met her. However, the horror of her fate seemed to indicate something far more sinister. Lefebvre and his team began collecting evidence and questioning those who knew Renée. The first stop was her apartment, where they found a carefully decorated space that reflected Renée's vibrant personality. Among her belongings, they found her personal diary, full of notes about her studies, dreams, and friendships. There were no indications that she was involved in dangerous activities. The investigators interviewed her classmates, professors, and closest friends, building a profile of the victim and trying to identify any possible threat in her life. Among the testimonies, a recurring name emerged: Issei, a fellow student with an unsettling fascination with literature and dark poetry. Several witnesses recalled seeing Issei in the company of Renée in the weeks before her disappearance. At first, Issei seemed like a shy and reserved student, someone who went unnoticed among the crowd of students. He was known for his interest in Japanese literature and his ability to recite poems from memory. However, as investigators delved deeper into his behavior, they began to perceive a dark undercurrent in his demeanor. Issei's classmates noticed that his interest in Renée had become almost obsessive. He offered to help her with her studies, to walk her home after class, and to share his writings with her. Lefebvre soon discovered that Issei had left inadvertent clues of his disturbing fixation on Renée. The letters he wrote to her, filled with poetic allusions and declarations of admiration, progressed from simple interest to a sign of sick obsession. Classmates recalled incidents in which Issei had shown irrational jealousy when Renée spoke with other men, and some mentioned that his behavior showed an intensity they found disturbing. Lefebvre and his team decided to focus their efforts on investigating Issei more deeply. Reviewing Issei's academic and personal history, they found indications of a complex and possibly disturbed mind. He had been a brilliant student, but his papers and essays revealed a persistent fascination with dark and disturbing topics. Issei had written about the fusion of beauty and horror, the intersection between life and death, displaying deeply twisted thinking and a tendency to romanticize violence. Lefebvre and his team also interviewed professors and other students who knew Issei. The descriptions they received were contradictory. Some saw him as a misunderstood genius, while others considered him a disturbing individual with an unsettling presence. The ambiguity in their descriptions only increased the urgency to solve the case before another crime was committed. Issei's apartment was the next place to be investigated. What they found there surpassed even Lefebvre's worst expectations. The scene was a reflection of the darkest depths of the human mind. The walls were adorned with macabre images and writings in Japanese, some of them poems and dark texts that spoke of death and obsession. Every corner of the apartment seemed to be filled with a sinister and oppressive atmosphere. On Issei's desk, detectives found piles of books on cannibalism and ancient rituals, further intensifying the seriousness of their suspicions. The kitchen showed signs of having been used for terrible purposes. There were modified kitchen utensils and containers with unknown substances, some of which had traces of blood. The shelves were full of jars with Japanese labels containing liquids and powders suggesting advanced knowledge of chemistry. Forensic tests revealed biological remains that matched the victim, confirming the investigators' worst fears. The analysis of these remains made it clear that Renee had been the object of a meticulously planned act of cannibalism. As the evidence piled up, Lefebvre faced the reality that this was a case of cannibalism. The magnitude of the horror uncovered left the investigation team stunned. Issei's journals found among his belongings contained explicit details of his macabre fantasies and how he had carried them out. Issei's writings were disturbing in their meticulousness, with detailed descriptions of his plans and thoughts. Each page revealed a deeply disturbed mind, obsessed with the idea of consuming human flesh as a way to reach some kind of transcendence. Lefebvre read with growing horror Issei's words, each line revealing the depth of his obsession and the meticulous planning of his crimes. In his journals, Issei described how he had met Renee, how he gained her trust, and how he planned her murder with chilling precision. The coldness and lack of remorse in his writings only heightened the gravity of his actions. Lefebvre knew he was dealing with an individual whose mind was a labyrinth of darkness and depravity. The Parisian community, caught between fear and astonishment, cried out for justice. News of the case spread quickly, and images of Issei's apartment, with its disturbing decorations, only fueled the hysteria. Police patrols increased, and security measures were reinforced at the university. Students who once walked carefree across campus now moved cautiously and looked around with suspicion. The media flocked to the case, with each headline more sensational than the last. Global attention focused on Paris as Lefebvre and his team worked tirelessly to close the case and bring the culprit to justice. Finally, Issei was arrested without resistance in his apartment. During the interrogations, he displayed an unsettling coldness as he described his crimes. His distant demeanor and lack of remorse left everyone present with a deep sense of unease. Issei spoke of his actions with a calmness bordering on the supernatural, describing every detail without the slightest show of emotion. Issei's mind, caught between erudition and madness, revealed an inner struggle that had culminated in an act of indescribable horror. Finally, Issei was arrested without resistance in his apartment. The tension in the air was palpable as officers escorted him out of the building. The scene, captured by media cameras, showed Issei with a blank expression, as if he were in another world, unaware of the gravity of his actions. During the interrogations, he displayed an unsettling coldness as he described his crimes. Issei's words, spoken calmly and emotionlessly, echoed through the room, leaving everyone present with a sense of disbelief and horror. Issei spoke of his acts with clinical precision, describing each detail with a clarity that only heightened the detective's repulsion. His detached demeanor and lack of remorse left everyone present deeply disturbed. It seemed that Issei did not see Renee as a person, but rather as an object in his macabre fantasies. His descriptions included how he had meticulously planned each step, from the moment he decided to approach Renee to the final act of cannibalism. His words were a window into a twisted mind trapped in a spiral of erudition and madness. Issei's mind, caught between erudition and madness, revealed an internal struggle that had culminated in an act of indescribable horror. He spoke of his fascination with human flesh as if it were an academic subject, without showing any human emotion. To the interrogators, it was evident that Issei neither understood nor felt the weight of his actions. His emotional disconnection was evident in every answer, and the lack of empathy toward his victim was terrifying. As the interrogations progressed, the detectives tried to delve into the motives behind Issei's crimes. They wanted to understand what had led him to cross the line between fantasy and reality. However, each of Issei's answers only added more mystery to his disturbed mind. He spoke of a search for satisfaction and an obsession with the idea of consuming someone's life in order to fully understand it. His words were unsettling, and the detectives knew they were dealing with a mind that defied all comprehension. The Parisian community, caught between fear and astonishment, cried out for justice. Police patrols increased, and security measures were reinforced at the university. The media fixated on the case, with each headline more sensational than the last. The world's attention turned to Paris as Lefebvre and his team worked tirelessly to close the case and bring the culprit to justice. Issei's mind, with its combination of intelligence and darkness, left an indelible mark on all those involved in the case. The trial that followed would reveal even more disturbing details, but for now, Lefebvre knew they had caught a monster whose very existence defied human nature. The trial of Issei Sagawa attracted unprecedented media attention. Every gruesome detail of his crimes was exposed before the public eye, leaving the audience in a state of shock. Forensic and psychiatric testimonies painted the portrait of a deeply disturbed mind, unable to distinguish between fantasy and reality. The defense attorneys tried to argue that Issei was not responsible for his actions due to his mental state, but the magnitude of his crimes and the meticulous way in which he had carried them out made such a defense difficult. The trial's climactic moment came when Issei's diaries were presented as evidence. The detailed descriptions of his crimes, written with clinical coldness, made it clear that every act had been premeditated and executed with precision. The courtroom, filled with the victim's family and shocked citizens, fell silent as Issei's words were read aloud, revealing a total disconnection from humanity and morality. Ultimately, Issei Sagawa was found guilty, but due to legal complexities and jurisdictional issues between France and Japan, he was extradited to his native country. The sentence was seen as unsatisfactory by many who felt that justice had not been fully served. However, the capture and trial of Issei served as a grim reminder of the fragility of safety and the importance of constant vigilance. Inspector Lefebvre, though satisfied with the resolution of the case, could not help but feel a shadow of sadness for the life of Renée, so cruelly cut short, and the pain inflicted on her family. The community of Paris, though scarred by the tragedy, found the strength to heal and remember Renée as a young woman full of life and promise. The story of Issei Sagawa was etched into the collective memory, reminding everyone of evil's ability to hide behind a facade of normalcy and the importance of protecting one another in a world that can sometimes be incomprehensibly dark.